Hey everyone, welcome to Tea with EC, where every week I get to chat to you about folklore, which is one of my favourite topics, so I am super excited about this. And a big part of what I want to do with this project is help you to also be excited about it because it's pretty cool. So I'm trying to think of ways to share the things that I find interesting about folklore in ways that you might also find them interesting. Because let's face it, there's a lot of danger out there in the wilds of the folklore wilderness, and what you really need is an adventurer's guide to surviving it. You may have heard of a mermaid, you might have heard of a selkie, you may even have heard of a kelpie. But do you know the difference between a bogle or a bogle and a brownie? Between the headley cow and the ehushke? Between a mermaid and a merrow? Probably not. I didn't until I started getting very into and researching all this folklore. And look, in the wilds of the wilderness, out in the forests, up in the mountains, on the high seas, even sitting at home by the hearth fire, the difference could quite literally save your life. It's very risky. Why chance it? Instead, come and join me to learn about all the creatures and all the themes and all the wonderful bits of, esoteric knowledge about the folk that you'll find in the Adventurer's Guide to the Folklore Wilderness. I'm still workshopping the name. So for the next year and a day, or until I'm convinced that you are fully capable of surviving in the wilds on your own, every week I'm going to share with you a story about a creature, sometimes a theme, something, the secret names of the folk. They don't like being called fairies, I'll tell you that one for free. Changelings, how to escape if you've been captured, how to get someone back who's been captured, that kind of thing. The way I'm going to do that is on Tuesdays every week, you'll find a bit of a hint on my social media. I'll be super keen to see if you can get the hint for what the week's creature is going to be. I know some of you who may be watching this are keen folklorists, authors, and artists who likely already have some pretty good knowledge around some of these creatures. On Fridays, I'm planning to do a video every week like this and join you with a cup of tea and give you a bit of a chat about a creature. And on Sundays, you will find a post on my website, Erin-Claire from a mysterious researcher and her even more mysterious research assistant, chatting about that week's creature or theme. So, without further ado, let's get into this week's creature, which is the benvery. Now, the benvery is the Manx name for a mermaid. Now, on the Isle of Man, you've got the benvery, the mermaid, and the Dinimara, the merman. Typically, mermaids, a bit dangerous, not so great to be around, definitely one to be wary of. However, the benvery has a bit of a reputation for being one of the nicer mermaids, so she's a good one to start off with. As a little aside, if you've been following me for a while, you will know that every year I illustrate mermaid, #mermaid. So the fact that mermaids are a theme for this year's May start to our folklore series should not surprise anyone. I promise we will branch out from the sea and merfolk, but probably not till after the end of May. So back to the benvery. The way I will structure these chats is we'll have a look at who is this creature, how do you identify them, where might you find them, are they dangerous, and what can you do to protect yourself? So, how would you identify the benvery? Basically, she's a mermaid, she'll be in the sea. Unfortunately, unlike some of the other mermaids that we will discuss at a later date, like the merrows, she doesn't have a single defining feature. So you might not know until it's too late whether she is one of the benvery or if she's one of the more dangerous type of mermaids you might find somewhere else. Best bet, keep your distance. You'd find her in the seas, particularly the seas around the Isle of Man, obviously. Unlike some mermaids who sometimes come up rivers and into lakes, the benvery hasn't been known to do that, just in the sea. She's happy out of the sea on the rocks, which some mermaids aren't. So you might see her out there singing, chatting. Best protections are to be very respectful, offer your services if they're required, but otherwise keep your distance. She has been known to fall in love with humans and humans with her. There is apparently a counter charm if you're suddenly feeling the urge to leap out of your ship into the water with the benvery. Unfortunately, I don't know what the counter charm is. If I find out, I will share it with you. Okay, I think that covers most of it. Oh, I should say, some mermaids have been known to raise storms, which can sink ships, and it's possible the Ben-Very can do the same, but more commonly she is known to warn sailors of approaching storms, and even to pop up in the middle of a fishing fleet, yelling, sail to shore, so that they get some fair warning and can get away before the storm arrives. So definitely better to have on your side than some of the other mermaids. Now, there'll be more stories than just this on my website on Sunday. But the story I want to tell you today is the story of Evan's sail and the apples. So once upon a time, there was a prosperous fishing family, the Sales, living presumably on the Isle of Man. And they were getting along splendidly. Old Mr. Sale, the dad, used to take a bunch of apples with him in his boat every time he went out to sea. And everyone was like, wow, Mr. Sale is really into those apples. And eventually one day it became time for Mr. Sale to retire. And unfortunately then, the fortunes of the family took a sharp downturn. Suddenly there weren't enough fish with every catch, they were looking down the barrel of a cold hard winter, and there just was too much work to do, not enough food to go around. So one by one, all the sons left to go and try their luck as sailors rather than fishermen, until the only one left was poor Evan Sale, the youngest. Now Evan was a good man. Every day he was out clambering over the rocks, checking the lobster pots, scrambling up the cliffs, looking for birds' nests so that he could steal the eggs and feed them to his poor elderly parents. And one day, as he's scrambling over the rocks, he hears a voice calling out to him. So he slides down the cliff, and as he gets to the bottom, he sees a Ben-Very sitting on a rock. And she's ever so sweet. She says, "How are you going?" and asks after his family, and particularly asks after his dad. And Evan pours his heart out to her and tells her all the problems that have been happening. And when he goes home and has a chat to his dad that night, his dad is like, "Good man, Evan, good job. I suggest tomorrow you take her some apples." So Evan does, and the mermaid's delighted. She's been missing her sweet land eggs, as she calls them. And immediately the family's fortunes take an upward turn. So suddenly they're prosperous again, they're doing well. Evan can even bring in some help to help out his elderly parents, which is wonderful. But Evan is really fond of the Ben-Very, and the Ben-Very is really fond of Evan. So more and more, Evan is spending all his time in his boat, out in the bay, chatting to the Ben-Very. And the villagers start to whisper behind his back, and they're saying some pretty nasty stuff. They're saying that Evan's lazy, that he's love-struck, that he doesn't care about his family. And this hurts Evan to the quick. Because after all, wasn't he the only one who stuck around when all his other brothers nicked off to become sailors and chase their fortune, and he was the only one who stayed to help his family. He was the one who put up with all the hard work through the hard times. And eventually, the villagers' whispers get too much for Evan, and he decides to follow all his brothers off and become a sailor. Before he leaves, he goes up on the cliff above the Ben-Very's bay, and he plants an apple tree for her. And he goes down and tells her that if she waits, once the tree grows up and the apples ripen, they'll fall straight down into the water for her, and so she'll never be without the sweet land eggs. And because he looked after the mermaid continues to look after the family after he's gone. Everyone prospers, his parents are fine, they've got some help. But the mermaid misses Evan. The mermaid was really fond of Evan, so off she goes looking for Evan's sail. And no stories tell us whether they ever found each other again, but certainly neither of them came back for the apples. Thank you for joining me. I will put up my blog post on Sunday, so don't forget to check it. And I look forward to seeing you for another chat next week. See you later.